Thank you very much indeed for that, Julian. I wanted to say by way of introduction that although I have a role and a responsibility, this is actually very much a collective effort in this university, and I will say some more about that later. But by way of introduction, I think it's always important to thank people who've been really important in making an event like this happen. And the first thing I want to do is to thank the Higher Education Academy for actually having a thematic seminar series on education for sustainable development. It has been described by some as the jewel in the crown of the HEA activity, and I think that is a very fair statement. I also want to thank Georgie Goff, who many in the room will know, who's done a huge amount in the background as well as the foreground to get us to this point, and Sue Levick, who is out there making sure all the administrative elements actually fall into shape. So my thanks to all of those, and my thanks to all of you for being here. My challenge to you is, as I hinted earlier, is it's really up to you to engage in what we're doing today, but to take forward the things that we do, to extend the conversations beyond today, to be inspired by the things that we share, but to note the policy drivers that are the subject of this morning's agenda. And I think this is an unprecedented point in time in terms of policy drivers for education for sustainable development in higher education. Simon, was that a Southampton toilet flushing?
No, I think the liquid nitrogen containers are being delivered outside. One thing it does do, it shows me just how good the microphone is.
Well, we shall look forward to more deliveries as the day progresses. Now, I was making the point, I think, about continuing the conversations beyond. The policy drivers are such that we are at this unprecedented step in time where the QAA, the HEA, HEFGE and the NUS have all promoted this agenda to a point where we are able now to say this is on the brink, if not already achieving the status of mainstreaming, but is at different stages in different institutions. And our role as academic colleagues is to help each other bring this agenda forward, to become fully mainstreamed, and to be able to see education for sustainable development as a visible part of each and every institution. And then for that over time to wither away as something separate and different, because mainstreaming means that is what the purpose of higher education is. It's not something special, added on and sort of done by those over there. It's actually just what the university engages in because that's the right thing to do. So my challenge to all of you again is to help that agenda move forward. It's an agenda for staff, it's an agenda for students, and I'm delighted that the NUS and representatives of the University of the West of England Students' Union are here today to help with that. Enough from me. I now want to hand over to Simon. We're trying this technology enhanced bit. Simon, some of you may know, was last night at the Times Higher Awards, and I'm delighted to introduce Simon as the recipient of the Innovative Teacher of the Year Award. So I'm going to ask you to give Simon a round of applause. This is a well-deserved recognition, Simon. My personal congratulations to you. I'd now like to hand over to you to introduce the ESD in practice in this sector presentation. And of course, you have been an inspirational leader in the sector on behalf of the HEA taking forward this agenda. So my thanks to you for that, and I look forward to your presentation.
Right, firstly, I'd like to thank you, Jim, and thank Georgie as well for inviting me to be part of this event, and I'd also like to apologise to everybody that I'm unable to be there in person. Unfortunately, Fridays just happened to be my split HEA University Day, and in about an hour's time I've got to chair a meeting about the National Teaching Fellowship Scheme here at the university, so I'm unable to attend for that reason. Because to be completely honest, getting in at gone 2 o'clock this morning after the award ceremony, after having 1 or 2 glasses of orange juice, the prospect of travelling to Bristol and being coherent was challenging, I think. Right, what I'd like to do today is just give an overview just to give a sense of perspective, not going into huge amounts of detail, because I think a lot of the later sessions will actually provide that detail. And what I'd like to do is just paint that overall picture. I normally like to have questions as I'm going through any presentation because I find it more interactive, but I don't think in this medium that would actually work. So I'll just go through, and I think it's probably best for this one time if people then wait for questions at the end. Right, so developments in ESD practice in the HE sector. Now, I always like starting with this slide because it shows a picture of what people generally perceive to be sustainable development in HE. Sustainability is all about the environment. The environment it's only about recycling, it's about nothing else, it's just about recycling. And in a HE setting, that means we want to get students to recycle. So that's all it actually is. And we, of course, know that that is wrong. But this is part of the challenge that Jim refers to, that challenge being that we need to try to break down those barriers, break down those preconceptions, and actually move to a general recognised institutional acceptance of what sustainable development is, what it means for the institution, and that it becomes the raison d'etre. A little bit about the Higher Education Academy itself. Those of you who aren't aware, we are the national body for learning and teaching in the United Kingdom higher education sector. We work in partnerships with institutions and sector bodies, and we are very much, increasingly so actually, focused on the student learning experience. Because obviously with the changes in funding, one of probably the only really good positive change from the funding regime is the fact that there is that greater acceptance, that greater recognition of the criticality of the student learning experience, the quality of that experience. But what I feel as well is really making sure that working in close partnership with students, and by that I don't mean you just have a token student turn up to a meeting. Meaningful engagement, meaningful partnership. And I'm pleased that working with the Higher Education Academy, I see that that is very much increasing across the sector, and it is certainly one of the main themes within the Higher Education Academy itself. Within the Higher Education Academy, we have a total of 8 strategic themes which cut across all areas of study. They might be employability, internationalisation, flexible learning, students as partners, just to name some of them. But I'm always delighted that education for sustainable development is one of those cross-cutting themes recognised as being relevant and having the potential to enhance each of the different traditional subject discipline areas. I won't go into huge amount of detail about what we're trying to achieve through the higher education ESD work, but I think the best way to sum it up is the very first point of the strategic aim, in that we look to make a leading contribution, and that contribution should be based on evidence. We want the evidence to show that ESD policy matters and how ESD practice works. We also need to have the evidence that shows that academics can engage with ESD, but more importantly, we also need to have the evidence to show that students are actually interested. What is our justification for this? This isn't just something that people who are interested in sustainable development feel should be done. We need that evidence base, and that's why I'm always so delighted that we work so closely with the NUS, and particularly with Rachel, who's there with you today, who's been brilliant at writing these reports, which I'm sure Rachel will talk about later, and also Charlotte is there as well, who's been a huge advocate of linking ESD between NUS and HEA. Right, this rather messy slide now is just to give us a sense of a picture of what are the sort of things that people think about when they think about universities. And people, if you ask people what is a university about, they'll say it's about the graduates, it's about the people who are coming out of the universities, it's also about the research, it's about the learning techniques, it's about making sure that the teaching is of a high enough quality, that making sure that we're actually contributing to the wider society. If you look towards the left-hand side, you'll see in not particularly larger letters, but you'll see sustainable solutions. And that's become writ more large across the university sector now, in terms of there is recognition that the interdisciplinarity of research can help us lead to a more sustainable society, and that's being driven by evidence and the evidence used to try to build solutions. Not just bellyaching about how disastrous the planet is in terms of the state of affairs at the present time and the future projections, but working towards a solutions focus. And I see that all these points within the word cloud all lead towards that widening participation, critical to sustainable development in universities. And I do feel that part of the role of ESD should be about engaging disadvantaged members of the community, the areas of the community that don't necessarily engage in universities, and showing how that matters to them and how sustainable development is about trying to work to enhance society. So education for sustainable development should be about innovation, it should be about global challenges, it should be intellectually fulfilling. So all those great things that are so positive about what we do within universities. And I think that's the key with this. When we're talking about developments in ESD, there has become a noticeable shift over the last decade or so of moving away from just it being about concerns and about solutions, but actually focusing on the positive challenges that we can expect as part of this. In terms of what is education for sustainable development, it's always useful to have a little definition to hang your hat on. And the one that I particularly like is the UNESCO definition, saying education for sustainable development allows every human being to acquire the knowledge, the skills, the aptitudes and the values necessary to shape a sustainable future. Now that is really important because within this particular definition, you're looking at making sure the students they gain the necessary knowledge relevant to their discipline, but through their skills and their attitudes and their values, they can then take that knowledge, shape it and work it into solutions that are relevant to the sustainability challenges that we face, but also this is really about interdisciplinarity in my view. And I think that is the way ESD has always worked and is increasingly going. And we can actually learn a lot as educators from the research community through this as well. But I don't think anybody can really properly talk about ESD without recognising the importance of the values. And that is a challenge in itself, because some people then say, well, you're actually going to preach mode now. You're actually going to an area where you're talking, well, this is what you should be doing. You must do this, you must do this. It becomes almost evangelical. But I don't see it that way. I think that we do have a duty, with the knowledge that we have, the understanding that we have in terms of the challenges that the global community faces in terms of that long and tortuous path towards a sustainable society, then we do need to try to shape values, because the values shape the behaviour, and it is all about making sure that people behave responsibly, not controlling behaviour, but there's an element of individual choice, and it's all about the responsibility within that. So education for sustainable development, if you're looking at those terms, then what does it actually mean within a university setting? Does it mean does it mean embedding sustainable development as a concept in a knowledge base across the whole curriculum? Now, it's quite easy to do that in some subject areas. For example, the main area that I teach in is environmental sciences, and you can argue sustainability is read all the way through that. So that's not a challenge. Within engineering, some of the colleagues in the engineering faculty, it's a little bit more of a challenge, but you can talk quite coherently about the impacts that happen from development, the impacts that can happen upon communities, and how you can work towards solutions for that. So it could be about embedding across the curriculum, but it becomes much more challenging when you really start thinking about how you're going to embed that across a whole university curriculum. And that a lot of the work over the last few years has been really about trying to push and push and push this notion of having sustainable development across the whole curriculum. Now, I'm very much an advocate of that, but only where it's relevant and appropriate to different disciplines, otherwise it can lead to too much resistance. Not that I'm adverse to a bit of resistance, but the fact is, it's got to be relevant, it's got to be within the subject area, and you're able to form and demonstrate those links. And within the ESD community, it's our responsibility to try to demonstrate those links. And that's what I see as being one of the most important elements. This varies from my personal view, by the way. I see it as being one of the most important elements of the forthcoming HEA ESD guidance document. How many acronyms can you chuck into one sentence? Which Laura will be talking to you about later. And that really does have to be working along those lines. But I think there's always a danger that with so much of the talk around making sure it's embedded across the curriculum, and sometimes some data suggests, and some authors do suggest as well, that we shouldn't have standalone modules because that is not embedded in education for sustainable development. I'm very, very strong in my belief that you have to have a hybrid approach to ESD, and that hybrid approach should be about embedding across the whole curriculum, but it should also be that you have the availability of standalone modules on sustainable development in different discipline areas, in different faculties, whichever way you want to call it, and they then support the embedding across all the different learning outcomes and the curriculum structure that we talk about. But actually having those standalone modules, I think, is important, because otherwise you're looking at just breadth. And breadth is not so meaningful if you haven't got the opportunity for depth. You get the depth from the standalone modules. I think there's a huge amount of richness in the education experience of being able to mix students from different academic disciplines, get them together into a standalone module about the challenge of sustainable development, and get them to bring their individual discipline, attitude, knowledge and skills to that debate, and get them to work on challenges together. And it's one of the things I do across my cross-university sustainability module, and I like to think it works. Hopefully it does. But I think that without that, you really do lose the depth, and you always need that depth within academia, without question. It's not just about the curriculum. It's not just about the taught component of ESD. It's also about making sure that you're actually working through with the students. So very much on the extracurricular side of things. And I think that NUS and HEFCE deserve such enormous credit, and all the accolades that are thrown at them are utterly deserved, for having a vision to push forward the Students' Green Fund. And the changes that's already making across the whole sector in terms of students. This isn't to say the students would ever do it, sustainability work, because they have been in huge numbers and huge volume across the sector for a long time. But there has been such a structured approach to working in partnership with the academics. And if you really want to have sustainable development within the institution, it has to be a partnership approach. It can't be anything else. It can't just be just students pushing it forward. It can't be just academics pushing it forward. It has to be partnership. And the Students' Green Fund has really worked tremendously for that vision. And when you hear the talk later by Rachel and Charlotte, then they will be talking, I'm sure, about the Students' Green Fund. And the 25 projects that have been accepted and working forward from there are truly inspirational. But the NUS have long been doing inspirational work in this field, and I'm delighted they've taken such a proactive approach to that. And obviously Jamie Applebaum deserves a name check for that as well, because he's been just an unbelievable driving force behind this. So you can get lots of different ideas behind this, but it's all about the extracurricular activity supporting the curricular activity. You need to have that combined approach, because students can learn, as we all know, within the hidden curriculum. It doesn't necessarily have to be taught components. Don't just learn through learning in the classroom or through structured assessment. It's additional activities that can take place. And you can reach a wider student base that way as well. So that is very, very effective. Shameless plug-in really, but University of Southampton, we run the Blacker programme here, which those who have heard me speak of this before, when I designed it originally, I came up with a wonderfully attractive name of Energy Audit, just to really excite students. But unfortunately, the student engagement, because they were totally part of the committee all the way through in design, they came up with Blackbird, came up with the name, came up with loads of ideas, design structure, partnership approach. It's made a real difference across the university, and you get people from across all other areas. And these are the types of ideas that have been repeated across the whole of the sector, of engaging students from all academic disciplines, working in partnership with academics for that extracurricular education for sustainable development. Just a quick other slide, a few other slides to put things further into context. You've got all these long drives, all the work has been done through all of the robust academic research papers, the work that's been led through the HEA, work's been led through the NUS, but also HEFCE and good morning, Andrew. Sorry, I can't be there to see you again. Andrew Smith says a lot of credit for driving forward the sustainable development work within HEFCE. And as Jim said, we really are at a critical point in time with sustainable development in HE. It's a wonderfully exciting time, because as well as the NUS and HEFCE Student Green Fund, we've also got HEFCE putting through the Sustainable Development Strategy, and the consultation taking place on that now. And that is going to be, that's going to have ramifications across the whole of the sector, as we know, when the previous work has taken place. And also the QAA, good morning to you also, Laura. QAA also deserve enormous credit for having a vision to put education for sustainable development in section B3 of the Quality Code. Oh, I did get that right, I haven't got any notes with me. But wanting to and accepting the need for us to work together through an expert group to develop the ESD guidance document. I'm not going to go into that now, it's not my role to do so today. But when you've got a QAA document coming through, you've got a HEFCE strategy, you've got all the NUS drivers, you've got all the evidence, through the NUS surveys as well, it is genuinely an exciting time. One of the things that I think is most important, though, in terms of how ESD should be developed across the sector, is it should be in a holistic institutional change perspective. So I've spoken a lot about ESD and all the different agencies that are involved in ESD, but you don't want those different agencies just working in a little pocket. You want to get all the different elements of a university working together. And one of the things that I am tremendously proud about within the work within the Higher Education Academy that we lead is our Green Academy programme. I was lucky enough that before I came into post as academic lead for ESD, that I was leading the Green Academy programme within the University of Southampton and now leading across the Academy. And I don't think for a second that any one institution within this list here is really working on their own and really excelling above all others. I think everybody's been working together. We have a tremendously rich partnership going on between all our different institutions, and I think that has helped us all. Chris Wilmore is there. How you going, Chris? It's worth talking to Chris and the rest of the ESD team, the panel and Asher there. The work that they've done in terms of getting students to drive through a lot of the ESD work is very, very different, and they've got quite a lot of recognition for that recently, and deservedly so. And I could go through all of these different institutions and talk about the work that they're doing. But the important thing is that it's not just in pockets, it's not just in the curriculum enhancement unit, it's not just within one academic and one faculty talking about running a module on ESD, it's not about one academic and one faculty talking about running a programme with sustainable development in all individual learning objectives. It's about bringing the academics working with the operational staff, and that is really important in terms of using the campus as a learning space. It's also about making sure that you then give the students opportunities when the academics are working with the operational staff to give the students challenges so that they can then learn new skills, gain new employability prospects, and use that information for working up data and developing new analytical processes as well. But also making sure you've got the senior management team involved as well. Through the Green Academy programme, we've been very lucky, we've managed to get PVCs involved as well. So if you don't get that senior management commitment, we all know it's doomed. So this holistic approach to education for sustainable development isn't just education for sustainable development, it is sustainable development in its truest sense across the whole institution. So in many senses, the E there is just the hook to get it in and then expand and build out. Green Academy 1 was so successful that we then managed to gain funding and invited applications. We've had another 10 come on. We just started Green Academy 2 now, and I've been travelling around the country, visited most of these universities over the last few weeks and seen the progress that they're making. And to be honest, it does put some of us to shame in terms of where we were with Green Academy 1 after about 6 months or so. The progress that's been made in some of the institutions is really quite phenomenal, particularly within UEA, Angry Ruskin, De Montfort, and NTU's work. And I know this is a shameless plug now, but in terms of the workshop and seminar series within the ESD package within HEA, I really do recommend you go to the Nottingham-Trent University one, because one of the things I talk to about people is that sometimes we struggle in HE to really get that hook for what is sustainable development. You can have endless images and they never really truly encapsulate education, sustainable development. Nottingham-Trent University decided to use the metaphor as food, and it hits it in so many different levels then in terms of health and well-being, sourcing of food, the procurement issues, the environmental impacts of particular food stocks, food miles. It takes it and touches it on every individual across the university. So there's a huge amount of scope and potential for all these different projects that I think is going to add a great richness to the ESD content across the higher education community in years to come. And I'm hoping when my replacement is in place within the HEA that they will continue to fund the evaluation reports and keep on checking what they're doing and making sure the dissemination takes place. Because when it comes from Green Academy, it's been very much reflective of what I was talking about earlier, the fact that we are more now working towards the positive nature of challenges. We're talking about futures. We're not just talking about the sustainability word that can isolate people. We're not just talking about the negativity. So Green Academy has really worked on that positive nature. It's really highlighted to us the difficulty of trying to tackle something as amorphous as sustainability through traditional pedagogy. You need to work collaboratively and you need to work imaginatively through concepts such as wicked problems. But that's set its own challenge, Because when you look at research, and this is what I said earlier about being able to work in partnership with research and learn the lessons from the research community, the research community has always collaborated, but that's been very driven by funding. You've got funding mechanisms where people can apply for a big pot of money, and you get different investigators from different universities, and you each get a slice of the pie. And you then publish it as a joint paper. Everybody gets the recognition, everybody gets the financial reward. Great model. Not so easy when it comes to teaching. We are all in competition in reality. We're trying to get the students. Yes, we share ideas and practice through teaching excellence, but we don't necessarily want to work together because it's more challenging, because we are trying to we are essentially fishing in the same pond. That's difficult. This is a big barrier that we need to work collectively with. And I think that we can demonstrate some of the outcomes from Green Academy as trying to break down those barriers, because we have. Now, I've said this to somebody a number of times now. The greatest thing that ever happened to me through Green Academy was the fact that I was able to go to our senior management teams and say, I would like some funding for us to be able to work through our sustainability work, and I would just like to show you what Bristol are doing and what Nottingham are doing, because they are our direct Russell Group competitors. And then our team will then go, oh, right, well, we need to fund this because we can do better. And then sharing those ideas with Bristol and Nottingham, and they can then up the ante there, and we can compete against each other in that sense. Now, that is working in collaboration and sharing ideas. The other thing that came out of Green Academy in droves was the importance of engaging students as change agents. Students have to be central to the process. It is beyond doubt now. You cannot escape the fact, just look at the sheer maths of it. Students typically outnumber the staff in universities 3, 4, 5, 10 to 1. You can't have a sustainable development university. You can't have a university building on sustainable development and sustainability at the core of its business, and everything it does is value set and sending people out there if you don't engage the students. Now, sustainable development university can take many forms. It can take the form that Inspire. This was from Trinity St David, University of Wales, part of Green Academy, and they put their whole scheme around the Institute for Sustainable Practice, Innovation and Resource Effectiveness. Great idea, rightly awarded the Guardian University Awards earlier this year, and it's something that is genuinely holistic. Another example, I love this example, this is always my favourite example we close on. TheHive, University of Worcester, working in partnership with the local community, having a library that is a common learning space for the whole of the community, not the ivory towers of academia anymore, sharing learning. Education for sustainable development couldn't be any more apparent in that vision, in my view. Plus also the building is pretty, I think it's pretty much standing actually. If Katie Boone's in the audience, she'd be able to tell you. But what I think though, the main outcome of Green Academy, and I've already hinted at this, if I can sum it up in any way, it is the importance, it is the value to ESD and HE of a truly collegial approach. Focus on knowledge, the evidence, practice sharing, but at the same time, once we're working together, friendly competition. Everybody needs competition to make them feel that little bit better. Chris, you're the one that I know is guaranteed to be there in terms of the other Green Academy one institutions. I envy the work of Bristol. You are my benchmark, and I hope to beat you some points. That's what I mean by the friendly competition, because that is how ESD practice has to develop if it's going to be the positive transformational force in HE that basically we all know it can be. Thank you for listening. It's a much better way for me to present because you don't have to gaze upon my features. I'm being blinded by my bald head with the light box and all this. So, better all around that, feel less calm. Anybody have any questions?
Simon, that looks like you have satisfied your audience. So thank you very much indeed. I'm glad the technology has worked. I'm glad that you were in a fit state to present to us this morning. And again, congratulations for a very well-deserved award. Thank you very much. We will now shut you down.
I wish everybody the best for the day. Thank you all for attending and supporting the Higher Education Academy. Thank you for supporting the work of UE, which is genuinely leading. It is brilliant. And I wish you all the best today, and I'm terribly sorry I can't be there to join with you.
Thank you, Simon. Bye-bye.